The final game of the year, the national championship college football playoff game, is coming your way Monday night at 7:30 in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. And boy, do we have a dandy. The Ohio State Buckeyes, number 8 versus the number 7 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We're here to break down a preview and prediction of that game with much more to come during the offseason. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. I'm Nathan Johnston here with my co-host, Brad Hopkins. It's time to break the huddle. Brad, as I mentioned in my intro, just got one heck of a game coming live on Monday night between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And these are two teams that are pretty familiar with themselves, or with each other, I should say, that they played each other in the last few years. And it's been back and forth between these two. It's going to be another exciting game. Ohio State Buckeyes coming into this game hot as ever. You know, no one thought they could do anything when they entered the playoff. Here they stand at 13-2, ready to take on the Fighting Irish. And in their own right, Notre Dame not expected to get this far either. And here they sit, 14-1, only losing to Northern Illinois early on in the season. Both of these coaches have a lot to fight for. Man, it's going to be a great one. Let's not waste anyone's time. Let's jump into this. 7:30 p.m. on ESPN, like I mentioned, Monday night. And let's start off with the team overviews, Brad. Let's start off with the Ohio State Buckeyes and their path to the championship game. Obviously, in the semifinals, played at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, Goodyear Cotton Bowl. Sorry, I'm getting my games mixed up. The Cotton Bowl against the Texas Longhorns, winning against them 28-14. Texas came out hot, just couldn't finish in the end. Had some costly turnovers at the end of the game. But let's focus on Ohio State. Let's talk about quarterback Will Howard. Obviously, started off this season kind of rough, had that mess-up play against Oregon. Now he's got a chance to redeem himself. Brad, thoughts on Will Howard? I know we talked about him last week, but again, the progression of his play, and he's not really being talked about in the NFL draft talk, but what can we expect from him Monday night?
Absolutely, Nate. And I will say, I think I've at times been critical of Will Howard. I thought the Oregon game, he struggled. He struggled at some other points during the season. The Michigan game, I really had my doubts that Ohio State was going to make it to this point. And I think Will Howard has really elevated his game. He's got the best group of receivers in the country. But credit to Will Howard. And Nate, it's been interesting to me, in the playoff games against Tennessee, against Oregon, and against Texas. Chip Kelly has done, I think, a really good job of settling Will Howard in quickly, but also utilizing his legs. And we've seen it all year. But it's really stood out to me. Chip Kelly has used some more design runs, especially in this playoff run. And, I know late there in the fourth quarter, I believe, Ohio State needing a first down, I believe it's on fourth down. And what do? They run a, QB power with Will Howard. So Chip Kelly has really helped him out. And, before getting your thoughts, I just want to say, NFL draft, I'm curious to see where he goes. I don't think he's going to be, a day one. I definitely don't think he's going to be a day one pick. Maybe late on day two, but I think he has a chance to go to a good team that's, looking for, a guy that they can sit and develop for a few years, and maybe he's got a shot. But I've been very, very impressed with him. I think he's really stepped up his game here in this playoff run for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, Brad. And before I ask you a question, let's look at this guy's stats. I mean, he's throwing the ball terrifically. 292 completions off of 402 attempts, over 3,700 yards passing, 33 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Again, most of those interceptions coming early on in the season. He's really learned how to, slice and dice that ball across the field, and he's been throwing some absolute ropes. I want to ask you real quick about Will Howard before we move on to the next guy on this team overview. We talk about his draft stock. Is this a sleeper pick? I mean, I agree with you in terms of I think he's, maybe a second, third, fourth round guy. could he be the steal of the draft in terms of quarterback play?
I'll be honest, and no disrespect, I don't think so. I am interested. Like I said, I think his legs make an interesting pick, and especially, I mean, you see that, it's been there for several years now in the NFL, but maybe it's a case of a team wants to bring this guy in to create some running packages for them. So I wouldn't say sleeper, but I do think a team is going to take a chance on him just simply for the fact that, hey, we can bring this guy in for third and short, for fourth and short, have some different packages. I think that personally is where I see Will Howard fitting in the draft.
Well, we know his run game has been excellent this
Mhm.
year. I mean, we've seen it from Kansas State until this year. I mean, there's no doubting that. Let's talk about his passing game, more specifically, a very dynamic, fast, big receiver in Jeremiah Smith. We talked about him last week as well. He has just been phenomenal this year. And I think he came out and said a couple of days ago in an interview, he said that he really hasn't put much pressure on himself this year and really isn't proud of himself, which I don't know how you break Cris Carter's 40-year-old record and you're not proud of yourself and you just go out there and play ball. But man, Brad, what do you think about Jeremiah Smith and what he brings to this Buckeyes offense?
I mean, and this is no disrespect to Ryan Williams and Wingo from Texas, but this guy to me is by far and away the best freshman and the best receiver in the country. And yes, I think if he was pro eligible this year, he'd be a top. I would say 3 pick. He might be right up there with Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter, that's no disrespect to Travis Hunter. This guy is generational, though. I mean, I think we're talking about I hate to knock on wood here, no career-ending injury for Jeremiah Smith. But I mean, I hate to get this crazy, but if he keeps it up, which I have no reason to think he's not, we're talking about a guy that's going to be in Canton one day with a gold jacket. But the interviews I've been so impressed with him. Very, very humble guy, and he has just been unbelievable. Nate, I thought it was interesting that Texas's game plan for him, they bracketed him a lot, gave him stuff to help. One catch, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but Notre Dame's got a very talented secondary. They're going to come out with the same game plan, and I'm not going to – I know we're going to talk about some other guys here in a few minutes, but, I'm thankful as a college football fan, we get to see 2 more years of Jeremiah Smith. Man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and he's got a chance to just shatter the Ohio State record books.
Yeah, Brad, and I know that we've already talked about this guy's stats as well, but we might as well reiterate them. 71 receptions, over 1,200 yards receiving, and 14 touchdowns. I mean, that's just ridiculous. He's having one heck of a year. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Notre Dame tries to bracket him. I think Texas did a phenomenal job. I understand that Notre Dame has a very good secondary. I don't think they match up the same as Texas did against this Ohio State receiving core. And with that, they don't have the guys that can play one-on-one with your other wide receivers for Ohio State. It's going to be an interesting matchup nonetheless. Let's jump over to the other sideline, if we will, to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and their path to the championship game. Obviously, they beat Indiana in the first round. They get past them. Everyone thinks they're going to lose against Georgia, and Georgia definitely had their challenges put in front of them with freshman quarterback Gunnar Stockton. Notre Dame overcomes that. Then they go down to Miami to play a very tough, physical Penn State Nittany Lions team, and they handle business in a close win, 27-24, with a walk-off kick. And I was at that game, so I'm excited to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I got to see them in person last week. But let's look at their quarterback, Riley Leonard, Brad. This is a tough guy. I mean, just seeing him up close in person this past weekend, this guy's not afraid to take on hits. This is a tough kid. And he took a shot. He took a big shot. And I honestly thought he was going to be done for the game. The way he hit the back of his head, goes into the tent for concussion protocol. I don't know if he had a concussion or not, but I think even if he did, he was still coming out of that tent. There's no way he was missing this game. And hats off to Notre Dame. But, yeah, Brad, what are your thoughts on Riley Leonard and what he's been able to do this year transferring over from Duke?
Right. First of all, Riley's a gamer, and you mentioned he's such a tough player. We saw that We saw that in his career at Duke, and I'm a big fan of his game. Nate, I'm going to tell you a big key for me is they've got to utilize his legs with this Ohio State pass rush, and with this Ohio State secondary. Riley's legs are going to have to be, a big weapon. He's got 866 rushing yards. He's got 16 touchdowns. I think he has to give them, at least 50 yards on the ground. That's just going to be very, very important. He's a fine passer. I don't think he wins you games with his arm. And we're going to talk about this in a second. But his receiving corps has got to step up. I think Ohio State's got one of the top 5 secondaries in the country, maybe even a top 3. I mean,
Definitely
Caleb Downs absolutely, highlights that secondary. But this is one that, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but Notre Dame, I think, is going to be run first. They're going to be ball control, but Riley Leonard he's got to utilize his legs in this one.
Yeah, Brad, and you mentioned the run game. Let's jump over to running back Jeremiah Love, who has just put up a tremendous season. We're going to talk about Riley Leonard again in a minute, but I want to touch on the run game because I think you bring up a good point, Brad. Notre Dame's got to rely on the run game. I watched this team in person, like I said, down at the Orange Bowl with one of our biggest fans. Shout out Randall. Saw Randall down at the game. Got to meet up with him. So one thing I want to say about this Notre Dame team that I saw against Penn State in person, they're not going to create separation. They don't have the receiving corps to make that burst outside, even if it's on a quick out, quick hitch, a stop and go, whatever you want to call it. I'm not even going to say they had a tough time. They couldn't create separation even against Penn State. So I'm not sure what they're going to draw up against Ohio State. And look, everyone can point to that one play where, and I forget the wide receiver's name.
Jaden Greathouse.
Jaden Greathouse, makes a guy miss in a blown coverage, and then one-on-one with the safety, a quick juke, and he's in the end zone. I'm not going to discredit his play, but it wasn't the toughest defense to go against in the secondary for sure. And I actually met up with a Penn State fan as well. He was sitting next to us. And I'm drawing a blank on his name, so I apologize. But if you're watching, really enjoyed meeting you as well. And look, he talked about it too. He said Penn State's biggest bug is their secondary. They have a great up front, but they can't do anything in secondary. So going back to the run game, and I think Penn State did a good job against Notre Dame against their run. But Jeremiah Love, thoughts on this guy, and is he a Heisman favorite going into next year?
I mean, I think he's got to be for sure. We're talking about a guy 1,100 yards, 17 touchdowns. Nate, it's been interesting to me though. Kind of deep diving. Of course, he had the big run early against Indiana, but the Sugar Bowl, 6 carries for 19 yards, and then the Penn State game, 11 carries for 46 yards. So he's had honestly outside of that big run against Indiana, which was 98. In that game he had 8 carries for 108 yards. They have not been able to get Jeremiah Love going. And we talked about him, Jadarian Price, who is a very, very talented backup. For Notre Dame to have a chance, they've got to get Love, Leonard, and Price going. And like I said, against that front, I don't know. It's a tall task, but I'm interested to see. I think you're going to see Riley Leonard with some QB power. I do think they're going to try to attack the edges. They're going to test Ohio State to see if Ohio State will hold the edge. I think you're going to see some read option. I think Mike Denbrock, the Notre Dame offense corner, he's going to get very creative in the run game. And I think RPOs and play action is going to play a big part of this. But I think you're going to see a lot of, I think you could see some pulls, some power. They're going to have to get creative, I think, to really, really just try to get Ohio State to lose eye discipline. And that's to me the story of the game is if Notre Dame gets their running game going, I think they have a chance.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I'll turn it back over to you. That's my thoughts though. They've got to be creative in the run game.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about Notre Dame, to your point, Brad, is they play very disciplined football. They're not going to make many mistakes. And honestly, I was shocked to see Riley Leonard turn the ball over, I think, twice in that game. I thought Drew Allar would be the one that turned the ball over. And at the end of the day, Drew Allar did turn over the ball pretty good, which is what I expected. But I was a little bit surprised by Riley Leonard's passing decisions on some of those throws. It seemed a little forced. Now, granted, I think Penn State matched up better with Notre Dame step for step. I think those were two ground and pound teams. We talked about it in the preview, and it was definitely true as I sat there and watched the game. It's going to be interesting to see who wins the line of scrimmage in this one. And I think that brings us to our key storylines for the game. Let's talk about the middle eight dominance. And what I mean by that is Notre Dame has excelled in the middle 8 minutes, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the last 4 minutes of the second half, outscoring opponents 148-17 in this period. They've done a tremendous job. How is Ohio State going to strategically match up against this? And Brad, I think that kind of just goes into overall, what is the key to victory for Notre Dame and what is the key to victory for Ohio State? Let's start off with Notre Dame.
Yeah, so for Notre Dame, for me, I talked about getting the running and going. Nate, I think they have the defense to, I won't say completely stop Ohio State, but I think slow them down. For Notre Dame, I think they've got to get the run game going. I think they've got to play a little ball control. I mean, I think Notre Dame would be perfectly fine if, they have 35 minutes of the time of possession, just to keep Ohio State off the field. And look, the temperature's not going to play a factor of this and all that. These two teams, I mean, we're 16 games in the season, something like that. So that's not going to be a factor. But look, if you can wear down Ohio State, you got a chance. I think two really guys play a critical role. You mentioned Jaden Greathouse, and Nate, I think you made a really good point, man. Notre Dame does not have that game-breaking receiver. Ohio State probably has. They probably have three
at least.
But Jaden Greathouse does have some capability. But the guy that I really think is key is their tight end Mitchell Evans. He's a very good tight end, and I think they got to get him going. And look, a tight end is a quarterback's best friend. We saw that, Tyler Warren with Drew Aller, of course, Brock Bowers for Georgia the past couple years. We've seen tight ends are that safety valve. They're a matchup nightmare. And Mitchell Evans, I think, is going to be really, really key. Real quick, the key for Ohio State for me is will Howard continue to play efficient football and non-turnover football? And Nate, I will say this Notre Dame front seven, it's undersized a little bit. They're very talented. I think they're going to, like I said, I think they're going to really bracket Jeremiah Smith. And I will say Texas did a good job on Emeka Egbuka. If Carnell Tate for Ohio State, if he has the same kind of game he did against Texas, they're going to be fine. I think they're going to get Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins very involved in this running game. We saw, man, was that a blow to Texas at the end of the first half with that screenplay? I think a lot of people forget just how talented receiving backs that Judkins and Henderson are. And I think those two are really, really, if Will Howard's able to find them, man, Ohio State's going to be tough to slow down.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we wake up Tuesday morning and the article reads Notre Dame beats Ohio State, I think the article reads as follows: Riley Leonard doesn't turn the ball over. They consistently put up about 5 or 6 drives of 8+ minutes that result in, let's say, 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals. I think they've got to keep Ohio State off the field, because what do we know about Ohio State? They can score, they can beat you, and they can beat you in multiple ways. I don't think Notre Dame possesses that quality. I think they're very dominant in the run game. And look, they are disciplined. There were some runs in that game that I watched down in Miami where it didn't look like any hole was open. And then all of a sudden, Jeremiah Smith finds his way through and he's in the end zone. And I look around me and I go, how did that even happen? It looked like 2 inches between the tackle and the guard. So they do a very good job of opening up those gaps for the running back. Very good at getting to the next level and attacking those linebackers and safeties. So that's the key to victory for Notre Dame. Key to victory to Ohio State is you got to get Notre Dame on their feet. And what I mean by that is you got to score quickly. You put Notre Dame in a position where they're not in control and they're not used to, it could be lights out very, very quickly. We saw it against Texas. One of the biggest plays in that game was Travion Henderson taking that screenplay at the end of the first half for a 75-yard touchdown. At that moment, I knew the game was over. And the people around me watching were like, oh, you're such a Debbie Downer. I said, no. I said, those plays are momentum killers because Texas had just fought their way down the field, got some momentum going, scored. We're thinking, okay, we're going into the half tied up, or I forget whatever the score was at that point. And what does Ohio State do? Very next play, 75 yards, touchdown, momentum, Ohio State heading into the half. And I think that's going to be the key to victory for Ohio State is they're just going to have to win in multiple ways. They're going to have to score quickly and keep Riley Leonard on his toes, which I think Ohio State has done a pretty dang good job against opposing quarterbacks. And I think this is going to be one of the most physical quarterbacks that they've played all year. It's definitely going to be one of the most elite runners they've played all year and elite running game, I could say, as well. So that's going to be the key to victory for there. Now let's talk about these coaching dynamics too. Talk about Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day. And just want to ask you real quick, Brad, are we going to see a parking lot fight between Ryan Day and Lou Holtz?
Oh man, that's been some drama. I will say, Ryan Day. I mean, if Ohio and Ohio State's the favorite, and they should be, but if Ohio State loses this game, no, I don't think Ryan Day's fired. But I mean, to an extent, I think he's gonna the hot seat talk is gonna be back on a little bit. It's unfair. To be honest, I mean, I really think, look, this team could have folded in after the Michigan game.
Yep.
I think some fans would have been going to the Tennessee game. I saw some crazy things on some message boards be like, pulling for Tennessee a little bit so we can get Ryan Day out of town. But look, to his credit, to that staff's credit, and the culture there at Ohio State, they've rallied. They have a very good chance to win a national championship on Monday night. And then Marcus Freeman, one of my favorite coaches in college football. Man, just to hear this guy speak and just to the culture he's built at Notre Dame, I'm just really impressed. Seeing that the Bears want to interview him. I hope he stays at Notre Dame. I just think he's great for college football. I really like him. Still young, still 38 years old, or 38 or 39, and he's killing it. But it's gonna be a good game. I'm really impressed with Marcus Freeman. Like I said, he takes over. He takes over for Brian Kelly, and he had some bumps. I mean, Nate, I think I believe it was first year they started 0-2. I think they lost to Ohio State, and then they lost to Marshall. Of course, this year they lose to Northern Illinois, and everyone's like, okay, we're getting ready to crash. And Notre Dame's in a good spot. They need to give this guy a long extension. He's recruiting well. I like how he does it, man. They get their players, through recruiting, and they nibble and dab in the transfer portal. But I'm a huge fan of Marcus Freeman. Just a great guy, and I really like what he's doing. It's going to be a good coaching matchup. I really think so.
Yeah, and Lou Holtz is going to be there too, Brad.
Oh,
I have been.
Oh,
yep,
boy.
It's been confirmed by sources. Lou Holtz will be there, ready in the parking lot to take on Ryan Day, and I can't wait for
Lou
it.
Holtz, honestly, he needs to sit down. He does. Oh man,
I can't wait to see him. I hope they have him on game day. I believe he might be on game day, so we'll be looking out for that one. But
oh boy,
no, to your point, Brad, for these two coaches, Ryan Day, just a tremendous job getting his team together. We talked about it last week. What a tremendous job they've done to rally around them, to regroup after that Michigan loss. And look, I think 99% of college football fans are against Ryan Day in this game, including myself. But that's not to take away the fact that, Ohio State has just done a tremendous job. They're on fire right now. And we see this in every sport, right? It's all about who's hot at the end of the year. You can go undefeated all year. You can have the best season of your life. But who's playing their best ball right now? And that's Ohio State.
Yeah.
And I got to give credit to Ryan Day where credit's due. On the other side, Marcus Freeman, you mentioned him, just a tremendous guy on and off the field. Never hear anything negative about him from any other source. And you mentioned the culture he's built at Notre Dame. I personally think the culture that Brian Kelly had at Notre Dame was a little bit negative. I think that it was going in the wrong direction, and I think Notre Dame saw it. And thankfully, Brian Kelly chose to leave. I think him leaving was the best thing to happen to Notre Dame since Lou Holtz. I mean, I really do. I mean, look, Marcus Freeman, the culture he's built. I want to mention this too, Brad. I know this is a controversial take, but at Break the Huddle, look, we keep it real and we keep it real. And ESPN wants to make a narrative about him being the first black head coach in the national championship. But to his culture, I mean, he comes from a really, really great family. His dad being a former Air Force member, served our country. His mom coming from a great culture in South Korea. So he'd also be the first, I believe, quote me if I'm wrong, he'd be the first Asian head coach in a college football national championship. And I think that's important to touch on, because when you see these young boys turn into men and become the leaders that they become, it all starts at home. And I just want to give a shout out to his parents and what a tremendous job they did of raising him. You can see it in his eyes. You can see the love he has for these guys playing for his team. You can see the love he has for the game, the respect he has for the game, and just a tremendous job. So just wanted to say that too, Brad. Again, I know it's a controversial take, but I think it's important to note that and note the kind of man he is on and off the field. So shout out to Marcus Freeman and what he's been able to do with this Notre Dame team, because everyone hates Notre Dame. Not everyone, but like 50% of college football fans think that Notre Dame's overrated and 50% love them to death. And I think Marcus Freeman has given that 50% of hatred a reason to maybe pull for him a little bit more this year. So shout out to Marcus Freeman. Now, with that being said, the winner of this game takes home the national title. Ohio State coming into this game favored by 8.5 points. I believe the over-under is 46 points. They see it going a little bit lower score than some of the other playoff games. Vegas usually doesn't miss on these, Brad. Who comes out on top in this year's 2025 national championship college football game?
So we've talked about the keys and just, real quick, I think Notre Dame's got to be able to run the ball. Nate, one point in real quick here. Notre Dame's very creative in their special teams. We saw that in the Georgia game there late.
Yep.
Notre Dame did something crazy on special teams. Notre Dame returned a kickoff return. Special teams are going to play a big part. If Notre Dame still has a couple of plays special teams wise, watch out. Look, I think this game is very, very close for 2.5 quarters, going midway in the third quarter. I just think this receiving core for Ohio State is too much. Jeremiah Smith, I think, has a quiet first half. He erupts. Like I said, the guy to me is Carnell Tate, and everyone forgets this guy was a 5-star. He's the third guy, but in that room. But I mean, he'd be the star on probably 90% of teams in college football. He's a stud. I think Judkins and Travion Henderson get going. And Nate, to your point, I just think late there in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, I think Notre Dame's going to have to start throwing the football because they're behind. And Riley Leonard probably has a costly turnover. I think Jack Sawyer, who had just an unbelievable play in the Cotton Bowl, a strip sack, and then a 90-yard fumble return. I think he makes some plays, and Ohio State's your 2025 national champions, in my opinion. I'm gonna go Ohio State's gonna win this one by 10. I'm going 31-21.
Okay, Brad, I like it. Yeah, look, previewing this game, I think the one thing that Marcus Freeman has to tell his team is we're not going to keep these guys from scoring, but what we're going to do is we're going to stop them from hitting the big plays. That's going to be the key to victory for Notre Dame. Can they limit the big plays? We saw against Oregon. What does Ohio State do? They get that deep post to Jeremiah Smith, and there they go. What do they do against Texas? They get that 75-yard screen play, and they take the lead heading into half. Those are the momentum plays that Notre Dame has to stop. They're not going to keep Ohio State from scoring. They're not. But they can limit the big plays. I believe they're capable of doing it. On the other side, Ohio State is going to want to get out fast. They're going to want to get Riley Leonard uncomfortable, stop the run on early downs, and get them in those third and long situations, forcing Riley Leonard to make plays with his arm. In the end, I'm going to take the Ohio State Buckeyes to be your 2025 national championship team winner. I just think it's too much for Notre Dame. The way Ohio State can beat you in multiple ways, they can beat you with run, they can beat you with the deep throw, they can beat you with the short screen passes. Any way you look at it, it's just going to be too tough for Notre Dame to overcome. Final score prediction for this game, I'm going to go Ohio State 28, Notre Dame 17. I think it's a close game. I think it's low scoring. I think Notre Dame does a great job of keeping Jeremiah Smith under 180 yards of receiving, but I think in the end it's just going to be too tough for the Fighting Irish. But hats off to these two teams. I mean, they've fought neck and neck the whole way through this season. Everyone doubted both of these teams after their losses, and they've come through. And now we're looking at an 8 versus 7 seed national championship game. Going to be a great one Monday night. Let us know down in the comments who you have coming out on top in this year's national championship game Monday night between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We'll see you next week starting off-season content you won't want to miss out. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and comment down below who you have winning. As always, it's Nathan and Brad. It's time to break the huddle.